But not only is it through the archaeological discoveries that we've had, not only is it through the extreme care and the eyewitnesses, but also it's because of the number of manuscripts that we have of the Bible itself, and also how many years passed between the original manuscript and when the copy was made. Now I want to illustrate this for you. So Larry, where's Larry at? Need your help, guys. Come on up here, bring my table up here. For us to visualize this, you know, it's really difficult sometimes for us to try to understand, you know, really how important this is. Thanks, guys. Have you ever heard of a guy named Plato? All right. We have 7 manuscripts from Plato. These are copies. They aren't the original manuscripts, they're copies. So I'm going to put out 7 pinto beans. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You probably can't see them too well, but I've got 7 pinto beans out there. All right? Now, the earliest copy that we have from Plato dates back 1,200 years after the original. So the oldest copy dates back 1,200 years after the original manuscript. Now, I've never heard anybody ever complain about Plato and say, well, you can't trust Plato. I mean, if you've ever gone to school, if you've ever gone to college, they quote Plato all the time. They tell you this is what he said, blah, blah, blah. How did they get that? 7 copies of a manuscript that he wrote that was actually 1,200 years after he wrote it. Another guy, in fact, this guy he was a student of Plato. Have you ever heard of a Greek scholar, philosopher called Aristotle? Okay. Aristotle, we have right now available to us about 49 copies from Aristotle. Okay. So I'm going to this is kind of rough estimates here, all right? I counted them all out in my little, server at home, but this kind of just give you a little rough estimate, an idea. Let's say this is 49 copies of his manuscripts. His manuscripts, the oldest copy we have, actually was written 1,400 years after his original. Now, I've never heard anybody ever complain about Plato or Aristotle and say, well, you can't believe these guys. They can't be trusted. No, in school you hear about Plato. In college you hear about Aristotle, right? They tell you all about these Greek philosophers, and this is what they're basing it on. 7 manuscripts from Plato, 49 manuscripts from Aristotle. Now, another guy that we have a lot of manuscripts from is Homer. Ever heard of Homer? All right. Homer wrote this poem called the Iliad. The Iliad. And we have 643 copies of the original manuscript, the Iliad. So I'm going to go ahead and put out 600 approximately. Thank God I'm not a bean counter for the government. Isn't that what they do? Oh, let's just round it off to 1 trillion. There's about, Al, if you want to, you can come up and count it later. There's about 643, roughly, give or take a bean or two, all right, representing Homer's Iliad, the poem, the Iliad. These manuscripts, the oldest one that we have available to us was written just 500 years after Homer penned the original. So this is pretty good. And when you look at this, I mean, compare that to those over there. You've got a pretty good pile of beans there, right? And imagine being able to compare each one to the other now. You've got 643. Now I can compare this one to that one, and this one to this one, and that one to this one. And you know what? Believe it or not, scholars have done that. That's their life. That's their career. This is what they do. They compare all the manuscripts to each other to see how accurate they are. Guess what they found out? From all the copies that we have from Homer's Iliad, dating back, the oldest dating back 500 years, it was written 500 years after the original, they have said, scholars say, that you can trust this to be accurate 95.5% of the time. Pretty darn good, you know, when you think about it. So what I want to help you to do this morning is I want to help you to visually see, in comparison, what we know about the Bible. What do we know about the Bible? Well, let's just talk about the New Testament this morning. I could go on for a million years with this, kind of, you know, ministerially speaking. The Bible, the New Testament, you have complete copies from Matthew to Revelation, 5,600 copies. Not 7, not 49, not 643. 5,600. Those copies that we have, the originals, the copies I should say, were written, some of them, many of them, 30 years after the original. The vast majority of them within 100 years of the original. Much, much better. I mean, look at it. 7, if I can trust Plato with 7 copies, if I can trust Aristotle with 49 copies, if I can trust Homer with 643 copies, and these were 500 to 1,000 plus years after the original, don't you think you can trust the Bible? With 5,800 copies, total copies, I mean 100% copies from Matthew to Revelation of the New Testament. But that's not all. Because we still have, and I didn't have a bucket big enough, we still have 18,400 partial copies. What do you think we can trust more? You tell me. Can we trust the Bible? Can we trust that it's historically accurate? It's mind-blowing to me. To me, it would be like somebody looking at this and saying, oh, no, I can't trust this, but I can trust that? Come on. Come on. Are you crazy? You know, I would think that, you know, people looking at that person saying, no, I'd rather trust Plato than this. People say, you're nuts. You're crazy. That's why we know the Bible is reliable. Historically accurate. You can take it away for me, all right, Larry? Don't spill the beans, yeah. Thank you very much, guys.